Today's Prismatic Warlock build is a special one as it's our first build that lets you get Prismatic nearly instantly. This Warlock build will turn you into a poison spreading god that will have you unraveling, jolting, scorching, and poisoning targets. All will give you insane light and darkness energy regeneration. Oh, and did I mention that this build will also make you an absolute boss destroyer in your super as well. So if you're looking for an insanely potent Warlock build that has it all and is easy to use, then this video is for you. I'll show you the aspects, fragments, weapons, exotics, and mods you'll need to get the most out of this Prismatic Warlock build. Getting into our build, and we're starting with our super, which is Song of Flame. And this has got to be one of the best damage dealing supers in the game right now, if not the best. And that's not just for ads, that's for bosses as well. Again, this gives you the ability to throw the wisp and then follow that up with a supercharged melee and get tons of ignitions, tons of burn damage, just wipe out entire hordes of enemies. So it's just really powerful overall and goes great with this build when we talk about our exotic. For our class ability, we are still running Phoenix Dive. This allows us that really low cooldown, so we can use Phoenix Dive as often as possible, which can allow us to trigger a lot of different abilities as often as possible. Next, we're running Arcane Needle. This can be huge for unraveling enemies and spreading that unraveling to other enemies as we damage them. So Arcane Needle is just so good on Warlock because it just spreads so much of that damage, so kind of an easy choice here. Next, we have Storm Grenade. This allows us to jolt our enemies as well as do a ton of damage overall, but mainly great for the jolting. You have some solid options if you want weakening, but again, we don't need weakening because we do have our Freezing Singularity Prismatic Grenade, which is going to allow us to get that weakening as well. So if between Freezing Singularity and Storm Grenade, you really get the best of both worlds when it comes to weaken and jolting. And then of course, we are running Feed the Void. This allows us to get our grenade back very quickly, as well as give us a huge boost to survivability because of always getting our health back on those same ability kills. And then we got Hellion. Hellion is going to allow us to do additional damage, also apply Scorch to enemies as we're doing damage to them, and give us another way to trigger ignitions outside of our super. For our fragments, we are jumping in with Faceted Protection. This is going to give us some extra damage resistance when we're surrounded by enemies and give us plus 10 strength, but mainly to make us a little bit harder to kill. Next, we're running Faceted Dawn. Powered melee hits against targets makes you radiant. This is going to make sure our weapons are doing as much damage as possible. So when we talk about this build, it has a lot to do with just leading with that Arcane Needle. So we're going to be radiant a lot of the time. Also, when we talk about our artifact, that's going to be another way that we stay radiant basically 100% of the time. Next, we have Faceted Dominance. Your Void Grenades weaken targets and your Arcanage jolt targets. I kind of touched on this earlier, but this fragment is what's going to allow our Storm Grenade to jolt and our Freezing Singularity Grenade to weaken. Next, I chose Facet of Courage. This is going to allow when we have Arc, Solar, and Void abilities to deal increased damage to target afflicted with Darkness debuffs. Our Darkness debuff is going to be Arcane Needle, and so when we're throwing our grenades, they're going to do even more damage with Facet of Courage. And then we have Facet of Grace, and this is a huge part of this build. Defeating targets with kinetic weapons grants you bonus Transcendence energy. Defeating targets with your super grants you and nearby allies bonus Transcendence energy. You do get the minus 10 resilience, which is a bummer, but this is really what's going to allow us to get that Transcendence energy really quickly and allow us to become Transcendent as often as possible. So this, if you're going to switch up anything on this build, don't switch up this. Now, getting into our exotic that really makes this overall build super strong, and we're going to be using the exotic class item here. Now, there is going to be an alternative to this as well, but I'm going to show you what I'm running for this specific build and what you're seeing here. And I have Spirit of the Necrotic. Damaging targets with your melee poisons them. Defeating a poison target spreads the condition, along with Spirit of the Star Eater. And so these two perks combined give us a really solid neutral game and just a way to do tons of different damage overall to a bunch of different adds, to bosses with Spirit of the Necrotic. And then as we're generating those orbs of power, as we get our super, we're going to have Spirit of the Star Eater. So when we do need to pop our Song of Flame, now our super is going to be that much more powerful, and these two perks together really create the perfect combination of being able to do tons of damage with your neutral game, get Transcendence very often, and then get your, once you're using your super and you've generated tons of orbs, your super is going to do as much damage as possible, really making this an overall really good class item combination. And I almost forgot to mention that when you are in super with Song of Flame, that your charged melee kills in Song of Flame will also trigger Spirit and Necrotic, so spreading poison on top of those ignitions, making this combination just next level. Now, if you don't have this exotic class item, as a lot of us don't have some of these combinations, you could just run Necrotic Grips. You will miss out on that super. The Song of Flame is so good, you could argue you don't necessarily need Spirit of the Star Eater, but I feel like this combination just really takes this build to the next level in terms of the damage it can do. Getting into our weapon, and the perfect pairing for this weapon is going to be Thorn, and this does work on the exotic class item with Spirit and necrotic. So as you kill enemies with Thorn, it will spread that poison even more, and so that makes Thorn just so good for this build, and just absolutely just makes it much easier to spread that poison. And because it's an exotic hand cannon, it does do a ton of damage, on top of the fact that when you get Soul to Devour, you're going to get that increased damage. You're going to get Radiant, which can give you increased damage, and then if you want, you can also run Surges, which we'll talk about when we get to our mods, to boost that damage even further. Now this thing does so much damage, I didn't see the Surges is 100% necessary, but if we're really trying to push Thorn as far as we can take it, the Surges are a nice touch. And then I'm just running Indebted Kindness. I would recommend any kind of light energy weapon, so Solar Void or Arc, to kind of help offset the darkness energy, because you're gonna get that very quickly because of all the unraveling. And then I'm just running Pro Memoria because I absolutely just love this heavy machine gun. And it's nice because I use this to actually shoot any tangles that pop up to activate Threaded Blast. So this is a nice option here. For our artifact, got a couple of things going here that I recommend. I recommend running Elemental Charge. This is going to reduce the cost of Elemental Charge mods. I recommend Threaded Blast, as I kind of mentioned. This would be great if you have just a strand heavy weapon, just so that way you can switch that real quick, shoot those tangles to just get that a little bit extra damage from Threaded Blast. And then Radiant Orbs. This can also when we pick up an Orb of Power, it makes us Radiant when running Solar or Prismatic subclasses. And then Galvanic Armor. This is going to make sure we're amplified, which will be easy become amplified from getting kills with a grenade to get that huge boost in damage resistance. And then Shield Crush, this is going to further help our grenade damage and grenade recharge. So this is a huge one right here. And then Transference is great because this makes sure that when we are Transcendent, which is going to be a lot in this build, we're going to do as much damage as possible. Now getting into our mods, do not pay attention to the fact that some of these armor is not masterworked. I'm currently poor, Destiny poor, in the sense that I am out of Ascendant shards. I don't want to talk about it, but if you're going to be masterworked, your stats and everything will be even better than what you see here. But starting with our helmet, I'm running Triple Kinetic Siphon. This just allows us to get a lot of Orbs of Power from getting kills with our Thorn, which is going to be super easy because this thing is going to be so souped up from all the damage boosts it's going to have. And then for our gloves, I ran Firepower and Kinetic Loader. You don't have to run Kinetic Lower, you could do double Firepower if you wanted to here, but I did notice when I didn't have Kinetic Loader, the damage or the reload on Thorn was just so painful. Even when you get those those remnants and you're able to get some of that ammo back, a lot of times you're firing so much that you're going to be reloading still, and so I do recommend running Kinetic Loader to overcome that. For our chest armor, just running your damage resistance mods, nothing really special here. And then from our leg armor, I talked about the kinetic surges earlier. This is going to make Thorn that much more powerful. Now, you feel like you're struggling with survivability, you could swap this out with something like Better Already or things along those lines to help just increase your survivability. But again, with Devour, that really shouldn't be a problem. And then for our bond, I ran Time Dilation. Your team armor charge has a longer duration. And so what this does is allows us to make sure that when we get our surges procced, that they last as long as possible. And then Reaper's great because of Phoenix Dive and that low cooldown, we're gonna be able to pop it a lot, get kills with it either via the Scorch or via just getting kills with our weapon right after or abilities. And so it's going to be just another free way to get Orbs of Power and get those going as much as possible. Overall, I absolutely love running this build. Thorn is one of my favorite weapons of all time. So anytime we get a build going around Thorn, I'm always super excited. And the combination of Spirit of Necrotic and Spirit of the Star Eater is just absolutely insane with this build. And it's probably going to be one of my favorite builds ever. I know I said that a couple of times, but this truly, in terms of ease of use, just how well-rounded the build is and just the amount of damage you can do, even to high-powered enemies, without sometimes even having to use your heavy, is just next level on this build. And hopefully some of y'all have this combination of Spirit of Necrotic and Spirit of the Star Eater. But remember, if you don't, you can still use Necrotic Grips. Not the end of the world as you continue to farm Dual Destiny for a better or this specific combination. But let me know in the comments below, what Spirit of Necrotic combinations do you have? Because some of those combinations still may work with this very build.